Pet waste left on the ground washes into our water, along with harmful bacteria. Help keep our water healthy and safe. Remember, if it's on the ground, it's in our water. Learn more at mark.org.
Can anyone hear me?
I was so confused. Why are you up there? Yeah, until they made her sit down here, and I was like, I actually liked it better when I was rewatching all of them when she was up there. I was like, I feel like she had more input up there. I'm not gonna lie.
Do you want an agenda? Oh. Do you want an agenda?
I mean, I like that.
Yeah. They're for court. We'll say for guests, yes. Okay.
We'll call the City of North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Committee meeting to order at about 7:03 on October 12th, 2023. Go ahead and do an attendance of the voting members. Ashley Phillips.
Here.
Jennifer Boyd.
Here.
Bess Bailey.
Here.
Daniel Trotter is here, and Martin Newton.
Here.
All right. Looks like we do have a few guests, contrary to what the Chiefs game would tell you. Or the Chiefs schedule, I should say, would tell you. Voting members absent, and remind me, do we have any voting members absent?
We have our newest member absent, and I'm going to totally blank on her name now that you just asked me this. Starts with a K. Krista, yes, is absent. She had a prior engagement, but she has blocked out the second Thursday of every month going forward, so we'll look to see her in November.
Which ward does she belong to? Sorry.
3.
Okay, thanks.
She was Connor Fitzgerald's appointment. Yep.
Great. Well, we will welcome Krista at the next meeting, hopefully sooner. Does anyone move to approve the minutes from the September meeting?
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor to approve the minutes from last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Any comments from the public this week? We will limit those to 5 minutes if we have any comments.
Yay, I sound like a squeaky mouse. Guys, first, I wanted to say when I came in last time and I was frustrated, that frustration was by no means with you, with the city, most definitely. I did review every single EIC meeting from the beginning. I've been sending Amy copious emails about it, but I do realize that at some point this committee lost direction, and I think the biggest thing was the strategic plan, which right now it sounds as if you guys think is intended for you to carry out, when essentially what the committee is supposed to be creating is a strategic plan for the city council to approve for the city to carry out, which there's like a million notes on, and I will send those all to Amy. I did get sick and I did not have time to finish going through everything with all my work stuff as well. But I like rewatching everything from the beginning, like the rules that we created, why we created them, so like a lot, like everything just made so much more sense. And it was a very different like makeup of a committee when we started, and we were brand new and trying to essentially, I mean, Bess was there. We were just trying to like create a foundation for a committee to like continue on. And I realized it was sometime even in the first round of committee members where we sort of lost the plot. But I do realize there were like a bunch of things that we had done and sort of committed to doing that have completely fallen off. And I know that because there's not enough members currently, it's a lot harder to do those things. But at some point, the city needs to support this committee enough and understand its purpose and actually utilize it. So like, I was also going through city council meetings. That's just a much bigger undertaking, but just sort of identifying all of the EIC related things that city council has never tossed this way. Like Amy's trying real hard, especially with like the transportation thing, which is definitely an equity issue. But things come up all the time. And this committee's purpose was to advise city council on those things. And I realize since the inception of this committee, the only time that's actually happened is when April, I think, maybe April and Yvonne went and had a discussion with city council one time on something they were voting on. And that was years ago. But like this is an advisory committee, and the purpose is to give an equity, inclusion, and diversity perspective to the decisions that the city is making, as well as creating a platform for like ongoing community engagement. And if, like I said, like, I don't know, the policy or the ordinance that created the committee, the bylaws that created the committee, like the very specific goals of the committee were outlined. And I know there was some confusion about bylaws. Diane's a lawyer, she might know better than me, but I'm fairly certain, even after like talking to some other city people, that yes, I understand it was weird that we made bylaws, but there was a reason that we did it, and it was because this committee doesn't work like any other committee in the city. It's neither the other committees are commissions and boards, and this was specifically intended to serve like a different purpose. So when me and Bryant created it, we created it differently. So the bylaws were intended to be like guiding for this committee. Also the only committee that the mayor does not appoint committee members to, instead is the responsibility of each ward council member. But that's why we made the bylaws, because we were literally creating this committee different than the other boards and commissions. But the bylaws are binding, and now that you have enough members, you guys could change them to be what you need them to be for the committee now. But you do have to like vote on that and then abide those rules. So not having enough members doesn't mean that you can just vote with the like members you have, unless you change the rules. So those are my 2 cents. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jess. Are there any other comments from the public? All All right, the next item is the strategic plan implementation discussion. I don't know if we have a whole lot to cover on that, but any particular items that we have to go over on the strategic plan?
Not for what we've created, but I think that to kind of go back to what comments from the public of, we had our budget set so that we could hire someone to do what sounds like a bigger strategic plan that the council members would help implement. Is that something that am I computing that correctly? And is that something that we have to revisit sooner rather than later? Like, so the strategic plan that was created was truly just for our committee, small level, and our steps. We got our KPIs. I do see how we tried, and we will continue to integrate like how we're meeting on Saturday. But do we need to talk about I'll kind of put this to you, Amy, too, but is that something that we want to bring back to the surface? We can talk about it next time too, but a larger strategic plan that we do hire that person for, because that was the route that we were going. I'm not sure. I don't think that you necessarily need to read it, because I think I understand where we're going. I guess I'm just asking, should we add that to our next type of conversation? Amy, include you in it and start moving forward on that piece of it.
Can I make sure I understand?
Yeah.
So the question that lies is, do we need to reconsider hiring someone to help us create a strategic plan that we're using to advise?
But it sounds like the strategic plan would be for the city.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're not asking about creating or working on the one we currently have for us.
Yep.
We're asking about hiring someone to help us create one for city.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, so I will tell you, right now a strategic plan for the city has been adopted. And I think when we do, because we do these, I'm not going to say powwows. What
That's called a retreat. So
Yeah, we have a
the city has a strategic plan. We will update that, or a powwow. I mean, either way. It's called a retreat. They have a strategic plan. We do update it. So actually on the city council agenda, you'll see, if you read at the bottom, staff comments, there's a matrix and it's updated. One of the goals in the strategic plan is equity and inclusion in the committee and furthering equity and inclusion in North Kansas City. So,
yeah, so I think I want to say immediate marching orders, hire somebody, but I will say as far as creating a quick, because that's a hefty undertaking, right? If I was just okay, so next time we all meet, we're going to create that, and you guys are going to do a great job. But there is one that exists. I think if we all kind of take time to look at the one that exists, I mean, I've definitely tried to put my eye on it for what I want to represent in my ward, what I know is needed with addressing erosion and, things like that are very key things that could really affect people in that ward and their homes. And we're doing that. That's underway. But there's other key pieces that, people have kind of thrown in the mix that we're totally open for you guys to kind of look at the strategic plan that exists, because we're going to have our retreat again in a year.
yes, we'll have one actually this fiscal year. We will have one. Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. No, and I'm kind of wondering with that, if we have, a couple representatives from the Equity and Inclusion Committee to come along and sit within that, to have that input, and what that looks like. Because it's a huge talking session. We throw lots of ideas on the table. Those get weighed through, sifted through, voted on, things like that before they kind of come to a head and become a plan for the city. And we try to hear kind of as many angles as possible from our constituents, from what we're trying to represent. But so I wouldn't want you guys to just kind of start from scratch. but maybe look at where we're, yeah. Sure.
Technically, this is what I do for a living. So right now, we are doing strategic planning at my organization organizationally, and then we are also doing DEI strategic planning. One is focusing on overall organizational goals, and one is focusing on essentially, it's an equity, it's a whole process. It's an equity audit. You speak to the people, the stakeholders. You essentially identify DEI needs. And then the entire DEI strategic plan is focused on how you further those specific needs, not necessarily, like that's also great because that is definitely part of incorporating DEI like on every level, or at least considering it on every level. But this is a strategic plan for the city that's somewhat based on the master plan, conversations that are had, city council meetings, all of these other things. What you guys were intended to create. Can I have this now? This is the ordinance that created this committee. Section G, draft and present to the governing body recommendations for creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that embraces the city goal to build a welcoming and friendly community where all can thrive. This plan should include suggested strategies and actions to achieve the stated goals and would be known as the North Kansas City Equity and Inclusion Strategic Plan. So it's a very specific plan for a very specific purpose, and it is an undertaking, and you guys would most likely need to hire a DEI professional for it, which is sort of the track that we were on at one point. But so even when they came in, I was just watching that meeting, they were explaining the process as well of getting community input. So surveys, and all of the engagement pieces that need to happen before the plan is even drafted. I think the point that we had been at was just our ideas as a committee. We were like, we want these, like the forums we sort of created like the police forums. That was something that would later be put on the plan, but we did like actively work on it, and we did set goals with the police department and things like that. But they are two different plans for two very different purposes. And like, again, while I think it's super important to have input on the city's strategic plan, this is a very specific diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. So we are definitely talking about focusing on equity issues like transportation or other things that city members, community members have pointed out, which if you go through the Facebook page, there's also no shortage. I was doing that at one point and then got really overwhelmed because I was like, people complain about things sometimes, and I understand it's not necessarily the greatest place to voice input, but a lot of those complaints do stem from like equity issues where they feel that their voice isn't being heard, or they feel that there is sometimes it's like curbs or sidewalks or accessibility or things like that. That is what the DEI strategic plan is. So they are two different documents, and I think they're two very different planning processes.
So yeah, so is the request then to look at city budgeting to bring someone in specifically to help create that piece is what I'm understanding? Because I would not want to put something like just on the group, just to kind of go, good luck out there, because that is a hefty undertaking. I mean, when we do our city strategic plan, there's like, I don't know, 30 to 50 people there generally that are involved, all the departments, all the department heads, everybody involved. So I think it could be advantageous to be exposed to that, to have those pieces in there, to kind of know the direction the city's headed, to kind of know how that plan can be interwoven into the bigger plan. So I think it's yes and yes, all the way around. And I appreciate you saying, no, it's a differentiating, plan. I think it's just the language of strategic plan. It's like, on our end, it's like, oh, it's kind of like, oh no, but because it can feel like a hefty undertaking, as it should, right? Because there's a lot of thought and effort that goes into it. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's something to explore. I don't know that we could put that together tonight, obviously, to kind of say, but I think as far as like a guiding tool initially, I think it'd be helpful for us to know kind of where the city's headed, and even getting the feel for how people feel about what may or may not come into the city and how that would affect us, and getting that input because it's real time. So it's kind of like we're reacting, but trying to be proactive enough to get ahead of it. But it's really hard because, again, it's private ownership, and we're going to see what comes our way, but we want that feedback. We want to know what people want. What if something does come? What do people want? What is the ask, from our city that says, if we're going to have something here, this is what we want to include, or we want to make sure we get out of this, or we want to make sure is being thought of in this process, and whatever it is, whatever that may be. And I think those are the things we have to think of, so it doesn't have to feel so big picture when stuff is happening like this. You know what I mean? So we can just kind of target, 3 items, even as a part of that. So yeah, no, I think that's great feedback. And I think if the ask is, okay, let's professionally, let's see who we can hire in at that professional level to come in to kind of guide and have kind of a workshop, or a workshop put together, whatever way they would deem, putting it together, where it's so many weeks or it's within a certain period of time. I don't know how effective it would be to be the once a month, maybe something more, retreat-like, that felt like, okay, let's focus, let's do this. So yeah, I'm open to exploring that, to bringing that forward to the city and exploring that just for everybody's purpose here, so you guys don't feel a sense of overwhelm. That's going to feel like a major, major undertaking. If you guys are all in agreement of that, if that sounds, like something you would want.
I was just going to kind of go back to what Jess was saying, and also piggyback off what you were saying is, I think we tried at a point and we only looked at one vendor, but it became abundantly clear that if we wanted a really nice strategic plan or guidance, it was going to cost a lot more than what our budget is. So I think the tension was, the city has given us this amount of money, so we felt like we were more of a grassroots kind of, pull up your bootstraps type, committee, where we needed to take a lot of this on. I think what you're saying is, and maybe Jess, you too, is a lot of the feedback for what you're going to build from your stakeholders is going to come from the community. I think that over the last 2.5 years, maybe we haven't engaged the community enough, but we also haven't seen that kind of engagement at our meetings and just the other things that we've tried to put out there. So it's hard to identify what those needs are without, doing a lot of kind of this brainstorming exercise and putting things in buckets and what can we do immediately, to build a strategy of at least generating a little hype. I think that was one of our main strategic goals, was to try and, get to these events and tell people about what we're doing. But if we need to have more structured events, where people come and talk. And I don't think listening to like every single gripe is constructive for equity and inclusion. I just don't find that to be an ideal way of building strategy, but maybe we have to start somewhere. So yeah, back to what you were saying though, I don't know how much someone's going to look at us if we only have $10,000 to spare for one session, if not, a little more than that. So we'd have to really weigh what we're going to get out of that. That's just my thought.
So as I understood what we are doing here is we went out for a formal bid process for a strategic plan. Those bids came in higher, and I believe we only received one response, and the cost was significantly higher. So this was before I had this role. But as I understand it, the committee decided to do the strategic plan on their own, knowing that it was not the final document, that this would develop the steps that were taken to bring to the city council the formal. So for instance, how you're going to review the code and look through it from an equity lens, that sort of thing. Those were the metrics that we were sort of trying to put in place, and then to get the actual physical recommendations to bring to city council. So I could have interpreted that wrong. Maybe we all could have, but that's how I saw this process going. I also saw the tie-in with you all making it a goal in your strategic plan. There's not that many goals. There's like 12, maybe less than that, if I'm just thinking off the top of my head. And that is one of them, because we were not at that point yet, because we did that formal process and only received one response, and the committee felt like it was more of an ask than they were willing to go to city council for a budget amendment for. But if you would like to explore alternative options some sort of facilitator, we could certainly do that. I will remind you that that will probably take a budget amendment because we've already decided to spend money on things for you to pass out. So we're already less than $10,000 at this point, and we're only 12 days into this fiscal year.
I think, again, part of the issue here is that they are not supposed to review city code. It's not their job to do the points on the strategic plan. It's the city's job to take the recommendation that they create in the strategic plan and potentially hire somebody out of the city's budget, not their budget.
You don't need to direct this towards me.
To
I took the orders from them. So
review.
this is not I did not decide this for
Because that
them.
would be, there's like a word for it, it's a specific type of review, but there's people who do this for a living, who review these codes from these equity lenses, and that would be later. So their job is to create the plan that says, we would love to do this policy and practice review in the city, sort of recommend to the city the best practices with which to do that review, how to do it, and then even be a part of the process, similar to like when the city was choosing sort of like DEI professional developments, when we sort of kind of vetted some of the people we were looking at, you guys would do something similar to that. You would be like, yeah, there's these 3 people that could potentially come in and review. You guys might sit down and talk. But a huge part of what was missing was the community engagement piece. And that is where you get all of the ideas and the feedback as to what needs to be done. And when you're talking about like things that are to come, we're talking about like tenants' rights and like protecting our renters as these things happen, and what we can do from an equity lens to protect the sanctity of our city and the people in our city as we grow responsibly. But again, you guys are developing the plan, which all of you guys, like we have, at varying points, there's been so much input from the committee on what the plan should be. So the next point is kicking it off to the community. That's surveys, that's focus groups, that's literally knocking on doors, because again, when we started this committee, we were all in agreement that the city does not do enough to engage community members equitably. So we're talking about sending out a survey online. Great, so we get a couple of responses, generally the exact same people from those surveys, who respond in those online surveys or whatever we do, or the texting or the whatever, but there's also a large group of community members who don't have that digital literacy, so they don't use those types of surveys. So as an equity and inclusion committee, your job is to create multiple means to engage with the community. And that does sound to like that's like knocking on doors and being like, hey, would you like to do this survey today? But that in itself is a whole phase of creating the strategic plan. And I know when Dion came in to pitch it, that was a part of it. And I do remember, I just watched it, it was overwhelming to hear the numbers, but she broke it down over time. And they also sort of explained that it wasn't absolutely necessary to do all of the things. They pitched their proposal. Their proposal was what they thought would be best. But they even said, like, we don't have to necessarily do this part of it. Like, it was about figuring out what the scope of work was for them and then how to make the money fit. And as Bryant DeLong said, I think I emailed it to you in like a direct quote from one of his meetings. If not, I will later. From one of our first meetings, when Bryant was like, you guys have a budget now of $10,000. Me and Gabby were like, okay. And he's like, well, that doesn't mean that's all you have. He's like, we just had to like pick a number. Because at that point, we didn't really have an idea of what we needed the money for yet or what we were doing. So it was mostly just to make sure we had a starting budget. But he was very clear that that could be amended. So I know it was like really scary to hear the numbers that they were throwing out, which, to be fair, is fairly standard for the industry. It's an ongoing process that takes a while. And I know part of what they were saying is that they were trying to stay on the process for up to 6 months, I believe. And then stay like on a retainer beyond that to help with things. That might not be necessary. Like, that's up to you guys to figure out what is necessary from a consultant. So the scope of work, like what you guys want them to do. Are they creating surveys? Are they doing the focus groups, leading the focus groups, those types of things? And last thing, as far as engagement, like, showing up to events is awesome, and you guys have all been like really great about that. But I also think it's about like serving community needs and answering the call when asked. So I know I came in and sort of pitched this idea for these community conversations, if you will, forums, and we were like, there's not enough people. I get that, but that is literally what people are asking for, a platform to converse on the ongoing issues in our city that they feel that they don't have a voice on. So when we're talking about marketing and engagement and getting people to buy in, there was a whole meeting, which I truly feel you should all go back to and watch, where Mindy Hart predicted all of this. She said, you guys don't know what you're doing. There will be no community buy-in unless you have like results, unless you can answer the call and show people that you're doing the work. And she even said, like, showing up to events isn't enough. It's about literally like doing the work. And that is how you draw people in. You're like, guys, we're holding this forum. We're doing this thing, like independent of the city. Because that was your job. The job of this committee was to be more engaged beyond what we felt the city was doing. That's why we created the committee, because we literally felt that the city was not engaging the community. So when we talk about buy-in, it's about doing those things. It's about being a present. It's about having a purpose. It's about the city knowing why you're here, what you're doing, and how you're helping them. And I don't think you could ask anybody in the community what you guys do and have them answer that properly at this point.
All right, so any other comments on the strategic plan implementation at this point?
I think
And
you
just-
guys have done a great job putting that together. It's really hard to come up with direction, and I get that. And there's so many different things that need to be covered. I don't want you guys to feel beat up in any way at all. If it just know that it's a thought of like, it takes usually 3 years to get something off the ground and going. We're around there. I don't want to say the world landscape is totally different, but it was different when this started. It was a little more amplified when this started, and I want to keep a momentum, and I'm super proud of the work you guys have done. So don't feel discounted in any way, and I feel like there's just baby steps along the way, and we can only grow and get better. And there have been some internal challenges that have been that have been worked through and things like that. There's just been a lot of things overcome that haven't been amplified to the public eye. And I think like those things are still tiny wins, and I just want to commend you guys for those tiny wins as well. Yeah, I think if we just focus on one thing at a time, and I know we're going after the code review for this weekend. I don't intend us to sit down and go page by page, word by word. It is more of us coming up with a specific statement and sort of reason behind the statement is the way I'm taking it, of what we recommend for the city to undertake, to say we want this to be rectified, we want this to be corrected, we want this to be updated, and here's why. And it could be as simple as that. We put that together. We always know that even a simple statement is very hard to write, right? But just putting together a recommendation is what we'll do. Just kind of pick through the sort of things that jump out at us, and just do our best to get something going. And I think that's a great plan just for like day one, because we can get really lost in the fray of everything that needs to be approached and grabbed. And I think we just focus and tackle one thing at a time. I'm still proud of the way Pride went. That was a great showing, and can only gain even more momentum. And so that's all that I want to say there. And I do look forward to Saturday. The strategic plan has been adopted as far as your guys's, but we all know it can change. It can, things can ebb and flow, and we can make adjustments along the way. And that's what's nice about that piece. Otherwise, it's a guidance. And I really appreciate your guys' work in that. So that's all I want to say.
I think that's a lot to unpack. First of all, thank you for your feedback. We probably needed to hear this, but as a committee, we should be able to take constructive criticism. We should be able to say, you know what, that's a lot to unpack, but we're gonna pick through that. We're gonna pick through it, sift through it, and we're gonna do what we're supposed to do and go ahead from that. Thank you for your comments. Next. And we understand that, and we hear that. We need to sift through it as a committee, pick out the parts that we don't like, the parts that we do like, move forward, and go ahead as a committee. Next.
Just so I'm clear, is there any
That's a simple one,
direction
but
for staff
We're looking for
on the strategic plan at this time?
No.
All right, so Mallory has provided us with the public transportation survey questions and the RFQ. I believe this was provided to review, so any like introductory comments on this won't be an in-depth review
Yeah,
at this
so the
time.
RFQ is currently out, or as an RFP, it's for bids, with a price attached. So the RFP is currently out, so we are soliciting bids from public transportation providers. It is due back to the city by October 20th. So I did include that in there for you to just take a look at for the direction that staff received from City Council to include in the RFP. So I think that kind of gives you an idea of what the council is looking for, what the city is looking for public transit services. We don't know if we'll receive any responses back or what those will look like, but we will review them after we receive them and then go from there at council's direction. So I included that just sort of as a framework for how the city is approaching the public transit issue that we're currently facing and will face into the future. And then I found at the last meeting, you all had discussed possibly doing a survey regarding public transit. So I found a survey online that I thought had some really good questions when it came to public transit, specifically concerning equity and inclusion. So those are for you to review, and then if you would like, at your next meeting, we could discuss your thoughts, comments on those. We can also do it tonight. That's just a lot for you to go through, so I wanted to give you more time than just a day to look at those.
No, that's really helpful. I'd really like us to review this and come back to the meeting next month and be able to talk about this, with a critical eye. So for homework, if we can review it, that would be really cool. I think that'd be a great way to spend our meeting in November. Ashley, will you be here in November? Remind me.
I will.
All right.
And then I'll be gone the very
Yeah,
next
so we
day.
got one more. All right.
So, I know. We talked about surveys before. Is this going to be sent out through the one platform that the larger?
So you're talking about the survey that we typically do through ETC, which is our community survey, and they can be. However, that isn't happening right now. It's in this fiscal year. It's budgeted in this fiscal year, but I'm sure everyone in this room is well aware of a potential large-scale development that might happen, and we really want to wait until the decision is made on that before we even look at surveying the community, because that changes people's thoughts, concerns about the future. So we're waiting on that, and then also we're only 12 days into this fiscal year, so staff hasn't quite had the time to prepare what those questions would be. So if you would like, those questions potentially could be included in the survey. Ultimately, it's typically up to City Council, but that would be a great way to suggest those. Or if you have another way you would like to survey, I'm open to anything, helping you get it out in whatever platform or way you guys would like. So a mailing, anything.
Okay. I think, is there an option to do both? But it sounds like we have enough time to critically look over this, come with our suggestions. I feel like it was Kim who talked about just the success rate being a little bit higher through that platform because you pay for all.
It is higher. It's a statistically valid survey too. And the response is pretty good in our community through that survey. So it's, in my opinion, would be the best way to reach the broader community.
Okay.
because it comes through multiple means, and it's accessible to everyone. But like I said, that the time frame on that is not in the next 6 months, probably.
Oh, yeah, so we might move forward. But also know that we were still wanting to put questions in on that too, unrelated to transportation, but it sounds like that could be a good for a lot.
I think that would be excellent to,
Mallory, when they're making these suggestions now, you take that to the city level. Like for you, this is like direction for you that's happening real time.
Correct, yes.
I was just curious if in the RFP, do you guys put anything like, I don't know, the amount of mileage that's covered in a day? Or, I mean, did you have that data from your previous?
So
And then maybe in your council meeting.
KCATA, the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, has a dashboard on their website. It's publicly available, and it does include all kinds of metrics. To the accuracy of that data, I do not know, and we don't currently operate the service, so it's all based on what they say. And mileage would be very dependent because there's fixed routes, their bus system, and then there's the IRIS system, which is Z-Trip. And so I don't even know that they measure that. So we have no requirement for mileage or anything like that. Really, this RFP is pretty open. It's tell us how you can provide us these services that we need in our community. And so I think the way it's written, it encourages people to think outside the box and propose us alternatives that maybe in this region we're not even used to, because public transit looks vastly different on the coast than it does here. So,
Not gonna lie, I'd love to see some bike taxis. I'd love to see a whole intermodal, just some variations of that.
one of the questions that a potential respondent asked was about various modes of transportation. So, and yes, it's open in that respect.
All right, well, we have homework to do.
So I will add that to the next agenda for us to discuss.
And I think there was also directive of, contacting the hospital to see what they could offer as far as transportation for,
Yeah. So we've started
customers.
those conversations
Okay.
with the hospital as well, on a staff level, and it's an ongoing process. So in the hospital, we're not the only community dealing with this. So Gladstone, really, the hospital serves Clay, Ray, Platte counties, and Jackson, of course. So they're looking at this, okay, maybe this is a bigger picture thing. So we're in conversations with the hospital about that.
All right, so last item, or second to last item, I should say. The announcements include our upcoming events, which I know we have some volunteers set up for. So first thing on here is the Halloween at the Wagon Trail at 1 p.m. this Saturday.
That's the dog event. I don't think we have anyone.
Oh, did we not? Oh, yeah.
Oh, are you? Oh, no, I forgot, Ashley.
Oh,
Yes.
Ashley.
Me
You were gonna
and my
go.
dog will not be
Yeah.
there because
Oh.
she does not like social settings. Somebody told me that I could come here and they would have the stuff that I could take. Does that sound
Yes, I can have stuff for you to take. Yes.
Do you want me to come pick it up tomorrow? Oh, the only reason why we talked about Saturday is because we're going to meet on Saturday, and then I could just come get it on Saturday.
Mhm.
And you were going to help me do that on Saturday.
Thank you for the reminder,
Perfect, thank you.
because I don't always have my fob.
Are you looking to have a table and do the T-shirts and?
Yes. Will take whatever you all give me, and we'll go. Do we have a table?
We do, but it's 8 feet long. Do you have a table? A smaller table? Does anyone?
No.
I want to say I have a fold-up table. It's like a 6 foot, and it folds up. so it fits in my Prius. So it should fit in
If it
anything
fits
else.
your Prius, it will fit my car. Will you bring that too on Saturday, please?
Sure.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll be there.
And at these meetings, to Jessica's point, when we're engaging in these activities or events around the city, like, is there always sort of like maybe a sheet of paper or something where it's like, have anything to share with equity inclusion? Write it down, or, share your thoughts. Do we generally do that kind of thing? Like, leave it an either open discussion, then you scribble down, or they can share whatever they want kind of anonymously, to the side there? Is that something that we've done, or something that we can just kind of incorporate with just pad of paper kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't think we've had anonymous, any kind of feedback like pad of paper, or maybe like a shoebox where you can
Right,
drop in
yeah,
your little.
hey.
That'd probably be a good idea, though.
With like maybe prompts, like we could do that with like little prompts of just like transportation or just whatever may be a big hot topic, which there are plenty, right? Just maybe like some little prompts of just kind of like any feedback, whatever that looks like.
I think we talked about one time doing also like a QR code option to a Google form or something so that they can do it anonymously. I don't think that we've got that yet. I think a lot of it's been trying to recruit people to join. So I think that those were the most conversations that I've had has more been, please join us and do that. But I love that idea. And I do think that depending on what our day looks like Saturday, I could whip something up real quick. But I don't think I'll have time tomorrow, and I don't have access to a printer if I'm not at work. Also, I hope my company's not listening because I'm not supposed to print there.
Yeah, I mean, if you sent it to me too, I could print it out and then have it here for you. Yeah. Or even just like tell me the questions and I can put them on something for you. Yeah, if you just shoot me an email with like the basics, I can make that happen for you. And then I might have a box. I'll have to check.
I would love the box, but I love Google Forms. And so I will maybe just create a QR code too. So that way if they don't have a phone or they don't know how to use that, they can still do it this way. But Google Forms, they can select any hot topic or, open-ended and be anonymous.
The goal is by Saturday. So tomorrow, so that she can print, because you will not be here Saturday, Mallory.
I will not be here Saturday. No.
Correct.
Yeah. So if everything got wrapped up by tomorrow,
woo! I got a lunch break. Don't worry, I can do it.
Okay.
No, I can.
I believe in you completely. Yes.
I'll get those questions to you. Just print off like some sheets, and then we do have pens.
Yes.
So
yes, you have the pens,
and then maybe
you have magnets, I believe. I was going to put it on the chairs back here. Those blue chairs.
Back here. Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Okay. Did you want to discuss further events? Because we have an additional Halloween, the trunk or treat.
Yeah, the trunk or treat was the
so
other item.
Martin responded, Bess responded. Hot dogs is where we landed. So if you can arrive by noon, 12:30, that would be great. It's really not going to be difficult. She's going to have the hot dogs all pre-wrapped in tinfoil and everything. So you're really it's going to be a great opportunity for you to just talk to people. So not a lot of work for. Okay. Nope, giving them away. Everyone loves a free hot dog. So yes. Yep. So if you can arrive by 12:30 on that day. It's at the Parks and Recreation Department. 12:30, yes. Yeah, at the park. Yeah, at their building. It's in the parking lot of their building.
And just as a reminder, we meeting at 9 a.m. Did we decide this Saturday at the library? Was it 9 or 9? That's what I thought. Okay.
I had on here to assign ordinances for review because that's what we had discussed at the last meeting. I do have those for you in Word format if you want that. I can certainly email them to the group, and I just did the first 3 chapters. So I think that those are actually the chapters that set the city. I mean, it's the ones that creates the council, the boards, the commissions, that sort of thing, the court system. So, yeah.
All right. So for the assignments of the ordinances, you said you were going to send those to us, and then we can review and then.
Yeah, I'll just send them to the entire group, and they're just in Word. It's 3 chapters in Word, and
Thank you.
that way, if you wanted to redline them, you easily could because it's a Word document.
All right. Any other topics before we finish up? I think.
I have something to that I want to pass on to the group. As you guys know, that we are a major sponsor of the Multicultural Festival at the high school. Well, our liaison, point of contact, Reed Pierman, reached out to me, and she sent this as a letter. I want to read it to the committee. She says, "Hi, Martin. First of all, thank you for all your support of the Multicultural Festival over the past few years. It has made a huge impact on our program, and we really appreciate it. Second of all, we are working on the North Kansas City High School Multicultural Festival once again. Sadly, I am graduating this year, so I would like to introduce you to Kylie Layton and Kate Highland. They are both sophomores this year and being a huge help in planning of the festival. They would be the new point of contact people for this year. We will still be involved, but mostly leaving it up to them. The festival will be on December 19th in the 3rd floor area auditorium, the same place it was the first year. We're planning a little differently this year. We have the beginning of the purely booths and food, then have everyone go into the auditorium and watch the performances. Food and booths will be available starting at 5:30. Performances will begin at 7. We would love your continued support. Are you still willing to contribute the funding of the festival? Talk soon, Reed Pierman." And so I reached out to her and I said that I would approach the group about it and advise the committee. And so what do you guys think about it?
Yes, I think we are all in agreement, and I know that we talked about this last time, but a lot of time was in between. Did we agree on 1,000 again?
Yes.
Yeah, we agreed to commit the same
Okay.
amount that we did the year before, I believe.
Okay, so I will personally reach back out to her and advise her that we're doing the same thing and we're
Yeah.
supporting it.
So if I can have a motion and a second to go ahead and make that contribution
So do I?
or sponsorship. I'll call it a sponsorship.
Okay, so we are going to again sponsor the Multicultural Festival at the high school. Motion to go.
I'll second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Approved. That's exciting. And looks like that's the same day as a city council meeting, but I'm sure a lot of us can help out just like we did the last couple of years. And Martin, it sounds like you're dedicated already. So
Yeah, I'll be there.
cool. Well, we look forward to that. Any other comments before we wrap up? All right. Well, I think it was a very constructive meeting. I'm excited for Saturday. I'm excited to have the RFP, so thanks for printing that out. And yeah, looking forward to a good fall. So, go Chiefs! I'm gonna call this move to close. Do I have to do this? All right, we'll call it a night at 7:40.
Someone make a motion in a second.
7:53. Oh
Yeah,
I
to
will
adjourn.
Move to adjourn the meeting. All right, closing down the meeting at 7:54 p.m.
So
Well,
there's still an approval process?
yeah,
that
to the
would-
deceased portion, I mean, I would have a preference to remove that. I'm not sure we necessarily always have to wait for someone to die